I think it was about 4 nights before he passed. I was laying there with him, and I was thinking that I was being like a little selfish because, you go through all of those emotions at the end. And I just said, Dad, like, when you're done fighting, you'll tell us, right? And he was like, yes, Steph, yes, I'm fine. And I think that he would have told me, if he was done fighting. Unfortunately, at the end, like, he wasn't done fighting, but sometimes your mind and your body are not on the same page.
Welcome to A Place of Yes, a podcast about how I moved through my darkest hour. And for me, that was in channeling my grief into good. Welcome to the show. Today's guest is Steph Hogan. Like so many of our guests, we first connected through Jake's Help from Heaven. Her and her husband were active participants in a summer fundraiser we had that was held at Vapor in Saratoga Casino. Over the years, we maintained a friendship, even if it was mostly through social media. But most recently, Steph has really been through it. Her father just passed away, somewhat unexpectedly, and she lost 2 of her dogs before that. Dogs that truly were family. And before that, there were even IVF struggles. I am so grateful that Steph trusted me to have this conversation with her. So one of the things my guests and I talk about a lot is how busy our schedules are. The to-do list is endless. I'm always taking care of what feels like everything. I take care of the house, I take care of my family, I check my emails every morning. That always means there's something else to do or something, frankly, that I forgot. And that last thing is the thing that's hardest about getting older. One of the things that helps me is my Magic Mind shot. And I find that shot not only gives me the energy, especially when I pair it with my coffee, but it also helps me stay a little less stressed, stay a little in control of my list, and keep knocking things out. I generally have my Magic Mind after my first cup of coffee. I just love the routine of coffee, so I did not want to change that. But instead of going automatically to pour a second cup, I take my Magic Mind. I drink it all the way through. I keep it in the fridge because it tastes a little better, in my opinion, cold, and they recommend it chilled. You can find Magic Mind at magicmind.com/placeofyes. And if you use the Place of Yes 20 code, you get up to 20% off on a one-time purchase. If you like it or really want to try it for a longer amount of time, get a subscription. You get up to 48% off with Place of Yes 20 as your code. So I am really happy to introduce Steph Hogan to the show today. A lot of our local listeners will know you, but to be honest, a lot of our regular audience will know you. And I don't know that you know this, but I talk about you a lot on the show. So boom. Oh God. So one of the things, especially in the earlier episodes that I would talk about was like how when Jake first died, I was in the real throes of my grief journey. I vehemently believed that there was a hierarchy of grief. And I was in that space for a long time. My grief is the worst grief. Every other grief is not as bad. And I moved past that over years. You know how grief is. It's like you're all over the place. And I started to realize that was 100% incorrect. But one of the things that solidified it for me is when your dog Ted died. You are very open in social media. So even though we've known each other a while, I don't know you that well. But I feel like through your Instagram and stuff that I do. And I didn't even really know. I think Ted you'd had some tests done, but I never thought that he was going to die. And when you posted that you lost Ted, I was crushed. But it became really clear to me through you how there is no hierarchy of grief. Like grief is grief. Loss sucks. It hurts. And it doesn't matter if it's your child, your spouse, your father, your mother, your friend, or your pet. It's a terrible journey. I want you to know that you have been an instrumental person that you probably did not even realize in my own grief journey. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Is there anything you would like to share with the audience before I get started? Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I live in Saratoga with my husband, Justin, and our 2 sons. Cash is 3 and Hughes is 1, as you know. We do have 1 dog now. As you mentioned, our other dog passed, and then our second dog passed a year later, but we'll get into that later. From Saratoga, I teach kindergarten here at Lake Ave.
I love your family. You know what I mean? And it's funny because social media is so interesting, right? But I talk about this too a lot on the show. When Jake died, it was before the Instagram world. It was before I think I sound like we're 127 years old, but it was a long time ago, and there just wasn't that kind of camaraderie. One of the things I do love about social media is it does make the world feel smaller, and it makes you have insight into people's lives, and it
allows you to have sort of that as a support as well. One of the things that when Ted died and then Sadie passed, I couldn't remember what the time between that was, but it was
within a year, like a week apart to the day. Ted was 2 years ago last week, and Sadie's 1 year this week.
And now you've lost your dad.
Yes.
And how long has he been gone?
Probably 5 weeks.
5 weeks. I think about with you this thing called cumulative loss, right? So cumulative loss is the experience of experiencing an additional loss before one has grieved the initial loss, sometimes known as cumulative grief, bereavement overload, or grief overload. Yeah. And I feel like that's where you are.
That is absolutely where I am. Like you were saying, riding the wave, but sometimes it's like you're starting to get your footing on the sand and then it just crushes you again. I haven't even had a chance to take a breath, but also trying to hold space for like, I'm so lucky that I had these 3 people in my life, 2 dogs, but I call them people. That's to me, they're,
But I'm telling you, that is exactly what helped shift my thinking. I don't know that you know how important that is, but I mean, it's kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of an asshole early on in my grief journey, because I was kind of like, you know what I mean? Like I just was so raw of my own loss.
And you know what? If I lost my dad first, I think if I saw somebody doing that over a dog, I would be like, it's just a dog, which when people would say that to me, I wanted to.
So I kind of, I think I reached out to you. I was kind of like, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry because I didn't want to be that person
always
anymore.
Been great. And I just so appreciate you during each loss I had, because you're not trying to be like lean on the people close to you. Of course you're going to lean on the people close to you, but you're just like, it sucks. I'm here, sit in it. Like that is what I need to hear. I think the frustration with people are like, she's not feeling better yet. Like I don't want to go to every social function because I don't want to do the small talk or, the signature head tilt, like, how do you? No, do you want the real answer? And that's something that I've been working on too with my therapist, because I'm so used to being like, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you ever felt the same way, but really, I'm not good, but I don't know how to say that without making the other person feel uncomfortable.
That is absolutely true, right? Like we are conditioned, or I certainly was conditioned, and I think you were, we don't even think about what, I'm good, you? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Say how you doing? Oh, I'm fine, how are you? Like we don't even think about those words. What is the truth? The truth is no, I'm not good. I'm not at all good right now. Like I'm really in the middle of trying to figure out my life without my dad, who was my best friend, and it's hard because
just free falling.
We don't want to put that burden on others, but sometimes I think, and we talk about this a lot on the show, what is the responsibility of us and what is the responsibility of society to get better at it a little bit? And some of that is easier, I think, than people make it. People make it harder. They make it because they feel like they always have to have the right thing to say. But the right thing to say sometimes is just, it totally sucks. I'm so sorry that's happening to me. Or I understand that you are struggling. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just that validation.
This did kind of happen with my husband. He's very social and I'm not. So he's trying to help when really nothing can make you feel better right now. But he's like, oh, it's good. George, let's do this. And people want to kind of fix it for you.
And sometimes you just want to
because
be
they love you. Right.
Yeah.
But you can't fix this. You need to sit in it, I think, and work through it. And I found in my own grief, if I did kind of just ignore it and keep going, then I never worked
then you're
through
not
it.
processing it.
Right.
Let's talk about your dad. So I've never met your dad, but I feel like I know him. I didn't even know your dad was sick.
This added a little challenge to it because my dad is very much private. And he did not want anyone to know. Literally, it was my mom, my brother, Justin, and me. And that was it. Super private. So what happened was probably Christmas time after then, he just got a cold, flu, didn't feel well. And it kind of lingered as it does during that season. And by Easter, he got some tests back. He went to the doctor and was like, I just can't kick it. I don't know what it is. And they said some of his counts were off. But even then, it's you need more testing. And he found out that he had lymphoma. But then from there, we found out that he had this super rare, it's 3,000 people have it in the country. It's called mantle cell lymphoma. It's chemo resistant. The challenge with it is once they find it, it's everywhere, and it's basically
so by the time they find it, it's too late.
Yes,
essentially.
So it was in 85% of his marrow and his organs because it was in his blood. But the whole time, my dad was kind of comforting us. He was they tell me that I can treated. They tell me, that it'll be fine. Anytime, because I'm very much like the fixer in the family. I drive everybody nuts, but like the first time, like the first day that he told me that it was MCL, I already had a file set up at Sloan, driving him
Trying to get ahead of it,
crazy.
yeah.
Right. But there was just only, unfortunately, like so much we could do, and it just happened so
That's
quickly.
so fast.
Yeah, he actually got chemo here at Saratoga.
Okay.
And then they found out that it was MCL. So then that's when we had to kind of shift treatment. But yeah, from diagnosis to when he passed was about 4 months.
There's no words really for it. It's just...
It's still honestly like shocking. My dad and I were like thick as thieves, texting all day, driving, everybody else crazy. You're like rolling
Super
around.
besties.
Yes, yes. I call his cell phone every night.
Do you?
And his voicemail just got shut off last night. My mom canceled his phone. I'm like, good thing I have grief therapy in the morning. But just to like hear his voice, it sounds so silly, but
It makes you feel better. It makes you feel better. And my friend Melissa, she lost her daughter Liv, and I don't know if she's still doing this, but she was like still texting her phone. Like, we just always
I
send
heard that
text.
episode,
Yeah.
yes.
And then she would just always like send a text, and it's like you know that it's not going to them, but it's that habit or that like connection that makes you still feel like
Yes.
Hughes,
yeah.
he is one.
Yes.
Like, does that kind of make you sad that he that he doesn't have the same relationship? Like,
this is obviously like hopefully the greatest loss I will ever experience. It hurts for my boys the most. I know what it was like to grow up with him as a dad, and they're going to miss a lot of that. But
so one of the things I wrote as notes was we're almost as sad for our kids' loss as much as our own, right? I mean, so I 100% feel that.
And that is like the line that I'm honestly just trying to like toe right now, because some people don't get that kind of relationship with their dad. So I am so lucky to have that. This sadness is just like the love I have with nowhere to go, because I mean, so it's like balancing that and also the anger, especially the first few weeks. And I'm sure it'll come and go, but like you look at other people and it's like, oh, that's not fair.
Like, why don't I get that? Yeah.
The one person that I want to be here isn't here.
Isn't there.
So my dad at the very end, when we switched to comfort care and knew that, he was going to pass, he was like, you need to keep going for the boys.
So was he up until the end? Like you were still talking with him?
Up until like the day before. So that to me also, like, I'm so thankful for that, because my dad showed his love through like food or through like acts of service, doing things for people. He was not like a huge I love you person.
Yeah.
So just getting that time is, to me, like, I'm so thankful for that, because I have friends that, have lost a parent in a car accident or something tragic.
It's sudden and you have no closure at all.
Right.
Yep.
Cash was able to come and say bye, and those kind of things that I think when you're mourning something, it's easy to lose those, but those kind of things are what I'm trying to hold on to right now to get through it.
I struggled with this for a long time. It's like you want to, and honestly, in one of the episodes that Brian was on, he talked about this a little bit more articulately than I think I can, but it's that balance of the loss and mourning for them and feeling all those feelings so vividly, almost. Like sometimes I would feel like this makes sense, but like it's like you grieve in like bright colors, right? Like it's like so like there's nothing muted about it. It's like when you're angry or like, especially in the beginning, everything is just like, it's just there. But then also not getting so stuck in some of those, because you do want to like honor the person that is gone and you want to still make them proud. Or like with Jake, I used to want to be like, I don't want to become this like angry version of myself or this hateful person, because I don't want him to be feeling sad about what I became, right? Like it's all these different layers of how you look at it, right? So I can imagine that you're kind of like, okay, Don raised me to be this kind of person, and this is who I still have to be. But I'm trying to do it without him right here. So it's not going to be the same.
Take care of yourself.
Yes.
Too.
Like there's all of these like different levels of it. But I do think at some points it does help to think of them in what they would want of you, right? Like it's so hard though.
And that is something I personally am working through right now. And I do kind of feel like I'm in like fight or flight mode a lot. The guilt of just because what my dad had was so rare, and I was the one like researching it and looking into all these trials and all these things, and like I think, does he know that like we did all we could, that I did all we could, like that I did all I could for him? It's like you wish you could do more. I wish that I could have had him forever.
You always wish that there was that there could be a different ending to the story, right? Like,
Right.
one of the things that I remember you had when we were like connecting through Instagram or whatever, and your post, maybe it was a post, maybe it wasn't with us. Like you were kind of like, I'm so sick of flowers. I'm like, the flowers
my
are making me so
gosh.
angry. Like, and I
Oh.
totally got that. Like I understood that completely.
Honestly, right now, sitting here, like a lot of that time, I just kind of blocked out. But my house smelled like a funeral home. Like, I don't want to be rude because I know people just want to do something to help.
Yes, no.
But the flowers, it's like my dad would be so mad. People wasted money on flowers. Like, donate it so someone else
Yes.
doesn't have to go through what he went through. Also, like, I felt really bad because my friends wanted to set up a meal train, but it was getting to be too much because people didn't know what happened and they were coming and trying to chat when they would drop off food.
Oh God, that's horrible.
Yeah.
No, that's hard. Yes.
And like they would do it to my mom's house and to my house. And it was just like, we weren't ready to talk yet. And that I think is something that, my dad ironically teaching me things through his death, but just how to handle these situations, because it's not really important, like how it happened. If someone didn't want to share it, then like that's not to be shared right now. But if you want to do something to help, like respect what they say or drop something off, don't try to chit chat.
We had a meal train for, I think it went on for like 6 or 8 months. It was insane. In the beginning, it was amazing because we just were zombies. Like we were just like a family of zombies. And everyone, my friend who had set it up was like, just drop off, like don't even ring the doorbell. They'll know it's coming every day between this time. Like it was like, nice. There was a lot of like parameters that were very like protective of us. But then I remember we start to get kind of like batty over it anyways, because I was like, we need to get back to regular life. And you're right. Like people are so kind and so generous, but at the same time, we don't need to always take what, I don't know. You know what I mean? Yes. Like we talk about this a lot on the show, and it's like a sticky area, but people are always trying to do the right thing, but sometimes they overthink it. And what the right thing is really just stepping back. We'll get into Ted and Sadie next. And you're only 5 weeks. Like 5 weeks is nothing. I mean, it's so.
I actually feel like it's getting almost worse right now because the shock is wearing off.
It's funny. People talk a lot about, and I've been thinking about this a lot because of my friend Melissa, and tomorrow will be 6 months, I think, that Liv is gone. And we had dinner with them on Friday, and they're just, their daughter died. It's horrible. Yeah. It's just it just sucks. In that first year, there's all the things, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember this pretty vividly. Like, there's all the things, and there's that anticipation of it. And you don't actually know if it's the thing or not, but it's the, like, oh my God.
The birthday,
the Christmas, the whatever, even the thing that's not the thing. You know what I mean? Like it's just the stuff. And I struggled for a long time. Like Wednesdays were horrible because he died on a Wednesday. And then it was like the 8th of every month. I think you're right. I think the shock wears off and then you face them, but then I feel like that's like a constant struggle in your head, right? Like a constant battle of like, how am I going to twist this? Like, am I just going to be all in this right now and be sad or pissed or whatever it is? Or am I going to, oh, hey, it's not so bad, And sometimes those moments will come, like the waves or whatever it is. Like I remember all of a sudden, like there was an 8th of a month and I was kind of like, oh, hey, it's not that bad, And
I just hit the first month. So my dad passed on the 18th. Okay. So then we just hit the 18th of August. And I was like, what am I going to do? Because he's not going to want me to sit around and be sad. Yeah. So I took cash out for dinner, like just the two of us. And it was nice because we don't really get that one-on-one that much.
Yeah. And with your first,
and we talked about my dad.
That's awesome.
So it was like, it was a nice night. Like I hate to be like, oh, it was a good time, but I felt my dad.
But it's okay that it's a good time.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it is.
We got ice cream after. Like it was exactly what he would have wanted us to do. Just the little moments for me every day are so much more challenging than like
the big
Christmas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Also like his birthday. So my dad turned 75, like a little over a month before he passed. And his birthday, like he didn't really even feel like doing anything, but we went over there and like had a little cake for him. The memory of, his last birthday is like, so that may be like a nice idea to do for his birthday to make new memories.
Yeah, you're like something like, and I don't know, like, and we would always, all these years later, it's hanging on the headboard still. It's this shirt that we would always dress him in. It was like, believe the hype. Yeah. Like we just had this like shirt that we would put it on Jake when he had doctor's appointments because I just wanted them to like,
Hype up.
yeah, like know who they were dealing with.
Yeah.
Like you're dealing with Jake Strada right now. Like I don't want any BS, so I would like, he would look really cute. He'd wear that shirt, and that shirt is still like hanging on our headboard. And in the beginning, when we would travel, that shirt came everywhere with us. I don't know if it's silly or stupid or whatever it is. It's
Yeah,
comforting.
right.
Like I think that's one of the easy ways that it doesn't make it better, but it sort of is comforting, right? Like finding something like, what was something he loved? Like, you know what I mean? Like just bring it with him, like, and be like, sit it down, or like your favorite picture. I don't know. It's always nice to have like a tangible something, like I said, like I didn't know him at all, but I knew him so much through what you shared and through the love you guys had. I mean, God, some of those pictures are just, you could see it. You guys were just so great. They're huge losses, but
the love is
huge it's
too,
just so huge. And you can't have this huge hole in your heart without having had it be so filled with love and all of the good things, and that's cliche, but it's sort of true, right? Like it's, you loved so big that now it's
so big.
Yeah, so big.
And that has been just also part of my like healing journey is, I mean, I'm only just begun it, but realizing nobody else is my dad. Like my dad and I didn't really have to like say things. We just kind of like knew, like he knew what I needed. I knew what he needed. And now I'm like kind of drowning because I don't even know how to like communicate what I need because he would just do it.
Because he knew what you needed.
There's so many parts of it.
How's your relationship with like your mom and your brother and
good.
Justin? Like how
good. Yeah. So I think like Justin is trying to do like everything he can. He was also like very close with my dad. And, he said one day, he's like, I don't think I'll ever like have a loss like you have. So I don't know, like, and I just really like appreciated that because I think, as your husband, as your partner, like they want to fix it for you.
Yes.
And he didn't necessarily sign up for this version of me that he's getting either. But just hearing him say that, like acknowledging it and sitting with it too. Yeah. It has helped him step up with the kids a lot too, because I'm just like, I'm in like fight or flight mode constantly. I'm just like, doing my best, but he has been an amazing partner through this. So.
That's such important reflection, right? To like recognize, like I may never have a loss this big, and like trying, like that's a big thing to recognize, and it's just big, right? Because
I appreciated it because it was like
it means he understands the vastness of what you're.
And my mom is doing her best. She has a lot to, go through, just like, not to say like the paperwork, but the, mundane stuff.
There's like the business part of death and there's the emotional part of death.
Exactly. And I think she's still working through the business aspects. So she feels like she can't work through the emotional ones yet. So I'm hoping that she can carve out some time to do that for her too, because I'm like, Mom, like we all need you around. Like, make sure you're worrying about yourself too.
No, 100%. It's hard on everyone.
Yeah. I just want her to take care of herself too. I'm trying to honor that like everybody grieves in a different way, but at some point, we have to start a little bit.
You got to start your own. So we've talked about this at 5 weeks, such a short amount of time. And when I reached out to you, I think I was talking about the article I was working on about like talking out loud and those kind of things. And then I was like, I struggled with asking you, right, if you wanted to be on the show, because I did not want to come across as being like, hey, I do a podcast. I talk about like grief all the time. You want to do it? Like I didn't want it to seem rude or bad or weird or anything. But I also selfishly know that talking about it helps. I went back and forth before I actually asked you of like whether I shouldn't. And then I was like, screw it. She's a big girl. If she doesn't want to, she'll be like, no.
And I totally would
no. Yeah, you know what I mean? I was like, I trusted that you would. But you were like, absolutely yes. Like, what made you say yes?
Honestly, you. And just the way that when he passed, you were just like, it sucks. I'm here. It sounds so silly, but worst club, best members, like really, I feel like they teach us so much when they pass and you just know how to navigate the situation. There's no positive like fakeness involved and you just kind of get to sit with it. And obviously I love talking about him. I'm still obsessed with him. I hope I am forever. And
that's one of the best parts about this. I say it all the time. I'm like, selfishly, I get to talk like I talk Ethan all the time because we talk about our boys, right?
Yeah.
Like, but now I get to talk Jake, and I know
it feels
like it's like balancing it out a little.
And I think like sometimes if you haven't gone through a loss like that, like if I tell like a funny story about my dad or something, people are just kind of like
they don't know how to react.
Yeah,
right?
they're like, oh, you like the head tilt again, or So you understand that it's like it's honestly like joyful for me to talk about like the positives of my dad and the good things and not talk about treatment or, you know, XYZ. It's just like remembering him. And I think, you know, these positive outlets, like that's how he would want to be remembered and be celebrated and help others. Because if somebody else is this like fresh going through it, then I don't want them to feel alone.
It's not about like talking just about the sadness of the loss. It's talking about the person you're missing. God, that's the hole in your heart. That's the like person that you just wish you had just an hour more with, right? Like, but there's joy in those stories because there's joy in that life that was lived as opposed to just the
and that
what
joy
happened
is what's
or
gonna
the
like
keep you through.
For me, that's what's pulling me up, you know. So I hope that other people are able to do the same. That doesn't mean that it's always going to be sunshine and rainbows. I mean, if you talk to my husband, he'd probably be like, "Whoa,
it's not the version." Yeah. That is not what I'm saying.
But it pulls you up. That's what they will always give to us forever.
Yeah. So talk a little about Ted. So Ted, how old was Ted?
Oh my goodness. So we don't really know how old because he was
a rescue.
Yes, but we think like 5 or 6. You know, they always say it's one age and then they look at their teeth. But so I had already had Sadie, who I had
Sadie was the original.
Older.
Yeah.
Yep, she was my OG.
Okay.
So I had her when I was single, like before I met Justin, like we were like a package deal. But she was just kind of like the queen, like would do her own thing, but was like there for me like through it all, you know. And then Ted's picture actually was on was in a newspaper or something or a flyer. And my husband saw it and was like, "Oh, this dog looks a little like Sadie." A week later,
you're like, "Well, actually,
I came home with the dog," you know. And he's not like the biggest dog person, so
he's got no choice at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
But Ted was just like an instant connection. It sounds so silly because it's an animal, but like his eyes were always on me, like always looking at me when I went through IUI and IVF. He would like lay on my belly when, you know, I was like sick for the hormones or I was miscarrying. He was like sitting next to me through so much. So it was like stronger than many bonds that I have with humans, honestly. And he was just like, he reminds me of my dad because he was like a servant, you know, to me. You know, was just there for me through so much. Yeah. And similar to my dad, he got sick and they think he had like cancer in his spine and it just had like already spread and, you know, he wasn't getting up. And it was probably like, I think a month diagnosis to passing. Yeah.
And then a year later is when Sadie passed?
Yes, like a week less than a year.
Now you touched on a little bit when you were talking about Ted, you touched on your IVF and your IUI journey.
Yes.
And I was thinking, as I think of your grief journey, right, I think you're in fresh grief right now with your dad. And then, you know, the loss of Ted and Sadie. But as I think of like your cumulative loss, right, like that has to play a role in it.
Honestly, it feels like so distant now.
Well, because now you've got this beautiful family, but there's so many people who I don't think know.
Yeah. So
how long it, like it.
And honestly, like, you know, when you're going through something and you just kind of like forget about it because it's trauma. Like
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And I'm certainly not like comparing going through it to any other type of trauma, but it was really hard. And it was like that period of life when all of your friends are pregnant without trying, or, you know, didn't want to be pregnant and are pregnant. Or
yes, all of
I was teaching at a high school at that point and I had a couple students pregnant.
And you can't make sense of it.
Nope. And it was like, we were building a house. So we were like going to different rental homes. So it was just like mayhem, basically like every aspect of life kind of. And now I'm like what I would do to go back for a day because my dad was there,
your dad was there.
Oh. But hindsight. So yes, we did. So after like the year mark, we did IUI, I want to say like 6 or 7 times.
Okay. I was going to say, I feel like you did it a lot, right?
One time did stick and I believe I miscarried about 3 months.
Oh, 3 months.
And then we did IVF, which was like a whole journey because, you know, you have to do all the steps leading up to it.
Okay.
And so they retrieve like the eggs from you. And then the actual transfer is when they put them back in. And so insurance will cover like 3 times or something. So we did it like 2 really quick, like
back to back.
So then it was like done. So then it was done. But the second time, I think it was like my ovaries just like expanded so much. I had internal, like it went into my stomach, like the bleeding.
Oh God.
And it was like, I looked like I was like 9 months pregnant. It's just like a crazy journey that you kind of are hoping every month will work, and then
Yes.
you like grieve that it didn't.
Yeah. I mean, it's like constant.
And your whole life really like revolves around it. It feels like appointments like 3 or 4 times a week. It's like and I loved my team. I went to CNY Fertility, but the first time that we transferred back in didn't work.
Okay.
The second time stuck, but then I think it was like a chemical, like it stuck for a little bit. And then like that's really hard because you get so excited.
Well, you're
then
trying not to be so excited,
right.
but then you're excited.
And then I'm like, I don't feel right. And then you take like another test and it's negative, and you're like, oh, this is like
that's an
I'm
emotional
losing something that I thought I had.
Yes.
So it's like a totally different type of grief, but it is still
But
grief.
it's a real grief.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's, you know, we talk about sometimes, and it's the generic way of saying it, but like grieving the life you thought you were going to have. And that's just like, that's a little bit of that journey.
Yeah.
Bit,
and
right?
it was like every month,
trying.
honestly. But then we got pregnant with Cash, and, you know, I'm just so thankful for him. And he certainly has the energy.
One of the things that I am sort of admiring about you through this conversation, and it was one of the things that I was not aware of at all. Like I was kind of like, you know, I talked to a lot of my guests about therapy, and I haven't gone, and I probably should, but I kind of use this as my, here you are. Yeah. But there is so much more to grief, I think, than certainly I 10 plus years ago thought about, right? Like I always thought of grief as what you feel when you lose someone. And now in this world of Google, in this world of grief and the journey, there's so much like out there that I find so helpful right now that I think is kind of, I don't know if empowering is the word, but it's really important. And you see in this conversation, like you're super well versed in it, like in kind of all things grief. So how did you start like learning about things like anticipatory grief and stuff? Because I don't feel like or was it through like grief therapy? Like, I mean, does your therapist help you, or was it a little bit?
So I had like a normal therapist. So I lost my aunt. So I started seeing just like a normal therapist. Yep. And he really helped me just work through also like my own stuff. Like yep. I'm very type A, I'm a Virgo. I want things to be done a certain way. Routine is life. Yep. And then from there, you know, I lost Ted, lost Sadie. I went through in vitro, and there's different types of grief, like you said, like I grieved the life that I thought I was going to have. Like, you know, this get pregnant. And,
you thought you were get married, get pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. So like there's that kind of grief, which my therapist kind of like talked to me about. And then when my dad got really sick, I was looking things up, and Sloan on their website, like, so if you look stuff up, they have like resources for families and things like that. And, you know, one thing on Google or one click on there leads to another. And I read about that period before you lose someone, and it's called anticipatory grief because it's almost like you're waiting for the ball to drop. And it's in some ways harder than normal grief because there's always that like lingering of hope. Like maybe he's going to be that, you know, 2% that gets better. Maybe, you know, maybe he'll be here for Cash's, you know, 5th birthday, you know, those things where that can almost be more of a heartbreak.
Well, because it's like you're thinking that the journey might end differently than you kind of know
right.
It's going to.
Where now, you know, just being like solution based, like I know that my dad has passed. I know my relationship with him will stay, but it will be different forever than it was. And I can work on that. But before that, it was like, how's it going to be? And, you know, you're holding out.
Well, you're
hope.
anxious.
Yes.
You're like super anxious about it. Right. You're right. I think anticipatory grief it can just be really hard because it's like you're going through the bad parts, but you're not going through any of the healing parts almost.
Yes. And it's like, I was feeling that. And at the same time, like, my dad was alive, but he wasn't living. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So
but it wasn't the dad that you've known for 36 years.
Right. Yeah. So it was like, I don't know, working through that while seeing, you know, this person that I love not be the best version of himself. Yeah. But, you know, there's always that hope in the corner, and it'll always just drive your mind
I mean,
crazy.
Someone's got to be the one who makes it, right? Like I mean, it's the stuff that can kill you.
Right.
I can so vividly remember like right after Jake died. And sometimes I'm sad that these are the things I remember the most of that, but I was really angry for a while. Like I was angry at the world, frankly, because I was like, why did this happen to me? Like I thought it was unfair. I was angry at my friends who had healthy kids. I was angry at people who had 2 boys. I was angry at family members who didn't have the right thing to say. I was just, you name it. Mm-hmm. I was pissed. Yeah. So I suspect that you are not always there, but are you there sometimes?
Yes, it's a slippery slope. And it's hard for me because then I get angry and I feel guilt because I'm like, my dad would not want me to feel this way. But my therapist always says you need to like feel the feels or they're just going to come back, which I'm not good at, but I'm working on it. But like you said, with people not knowing or not like saying the right thing, I got really angry with that. And sometimes I still do. But it's like people saying you have so many people that love you. Well, no kidding. Yeah. Okay.
And how is that helpful?
Thanks. You're really helping me out right now. Or just like people, like I said, asking about what happened. Because honestly, if you're asking about what happened, I'm not going to tell you what. Like, well, then it's not your business if you don't know.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
People also just texting like, hope you had a good weekend, thinking about you. Like, I didn't have a good weekend. My world is just like, I'm free falling from the sky right now. Like, why would you text me that? Like things like that. And I look at people that maybe aren't like close with their parents, but they have both their parents. And I'm like, why aren't you reaching out to your dad? Like what? And those things make
that
me angry.
Yes, no. Yeah. And it's interesting that's the last thing you said, because that is the place where I can still be sometimes. I have a hard time with just the idea of people who don't value life, right? Like, because Jake had no chance. Like, Jake was 8 months healthy. Then we still didn't, he was undiagnosed. He was, he had great doctors at Boston Children's, but they didn't know what happened. Like, he had a seizure that didn't even look like a seizure, and then was an entirely different life for him and for us and for everything. And when I see people who are careless with life, like, it can still make me so mad, because I saw firsthand how precious it is, right? Like, for lack of a better way to say it, like, when your life can change that quickly. And for your dad, what did he say? Like, kind of a month? Well, like 4 months, but a crappy last.
Right. But he was in the hospital for a month.
When you can see someone go from being in their prime, or like really all of it. And
he was in the best shape of his life. Like, when I had cash, he's like, I'm going to get in shape for the boys. Like, who else is going to help you? And then
that's just gone, and I get that, right? Like, I get that, like, that you're not the best version of yourself when you let yourself stay in there. But I'm in full agreement with like the therapist of like, you it's okay to be there sometimes, right? Like, and the people in your world, like, I used to sometimes get really angry and people would be like, oh, I hate to see you like this. Well, then don't look at me.
Right,
like, you know what I mean? Like,
this is me right
now.
Yeah.
And this is how, if you want to see the good version of me, this version needs to exist also. Because they can't, like, that, I can't be the best me if I'm not in this right now.
And I read something, I can't even remember where, but it was like, when you lose someone that you love so much, it's like almost like a sieve, like the thing you put the pasta in the water.
Yeah.
Because it's like the true people, like, that will sit with you through the hard times, they stay there, but like, the nonsense goes. And I just like, I don't have energy for those people or like those situations. And I feel bad saying it, but like, that's not my life anymore.
It was interesting for me too. And I think you've said this too, like, you never know who those people are going to be. And they're not always like the best friends you've had forever. Right. Like, I became closer to some other friends that I had because they could handle me in my grief. Some people can just be who you need at that time.
But I personally find that the people that I get angry with the most are ones that have never lost anyone significant to them. And I don't know if that's like something that I need to work through on my own, or if it's just like they haven't, and good for them, but they just don't know how to deal with that as well.
That's part of it too, like, is being okay with the fact that some people aren't going to be in your corner right now, or not that they're not in your corner, but they're not going to help you get through it.
Right.
It's like we said earlier, we have these significant losses because we loved so big and we're loved so big. And while it is heartbreaking to me that you're not having the same experiences with Don that you had them, and you will make new ones because your love is, like, you said it, and you said it kind of great. You're like, it's different now, right? Like, like, our relationship was one way and now it's different. And yes, you'd give $1 million to have it back the way you want, of course.
It's just not the physical relationship, but I still feel him with me all the time. Is that the way I want him with me? No,
of course not.
But I will do everything I can to keep him alive.
Did you and Don talk about this? Like, did you talk about?
I love how you call him Don and not your dad.
I do. Well, I feel like I know him.
So he was in the hospital before he passed for a week. And when he went in, obviously we had hopes that he was going to be coming back home. But until that happened, I slept over there with him. Steven and my mom would go home and then come back. Up until like the last 2 nights we all slept there. I think it was about 4 nights before he passed. I was laying there with him, and I was thinking that I was being like a little selfish because, you go through all of those emotions at the end. And I was just like, my dad was a man of few words. He definitely, like I said, showed his love through food and not really through words. And I just said, Dad, like, when you're done fighting, you'll tell us, right? And he was like, yes, Steph, yes, I'm fine. That was kind of like the only really conversation that we had. And I think that he would have told me, if he was done fighting, especially because it was private. There was nobody else in the room. Yeah. And then unfortunately, at the end, like, he wasn't done fighting, but sometimes your mind and your body are not on the same page. Yeah. And I was just actually talking to my mom about this morning, because you can really get wrapped up in like how unfair it is that he had so much left to give mentally, but how special that he wanted to fight so much for this life, like for us.
It's a testament to his love for all of you.
Yeah.
And his love for his value of life.
Yeah.
Like, he was not gonna,
and like never complained once. Like, the things he had to go through were so crazy, and he would never ever complain. That is kind of like what I'm choosing right now to take from it, that how grateful I am to have that kind of love and role model. And sure, some days I want to just like throw a chair at the wall and say how unfair it is. I wish he was sitting next to me right now, probably rolling his eyes at me, but how great that he fought so hard for all of us.
So we end the show with a little, basically it's called Ask Heather Anything.
Okay. Oh, God, I got to think of something.
So some people go super light. Some people go heavy. Some people hit me with 2. One of each.
I was going to do a grief one. Should I not?
No, you can do whatever you want. I'm here for it.
Okay, I have one. It's a little deep, but it's something I honestly want to know. Obviously, I'm like fresher to this journey. So if you could give me like one piece of advice going forward, what would it be?
There's so many of them, right? There's 2 parts, right? Like, one is, I think that you're doing things really right. And I think that you are really in touch with who you are and what your love was like. And you're not trying to hide from that. And I would say, keep that all day, every day. Like, so all of the feelings, when you feel them, like, be in them, because I think that helps. I really do. But then the balance to that, I think, is to think of Cash and Hughes, and think of your dad, and think of the people here that are most important to you, and think about how you want to represent your dad to them. That is not in conflict to the first piece of it, because I think you need to feel all those feels, because you're fresh right now, and you can be angry at people, and you can be really sad for yourself. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's sometimes people don't want to feel as sad for themselves, and you should, because you lost a huge part of who you are. But at a certain point, and you will be the only one who sort of knows that, still feel that, but feel it a little less, right? The second thing is, and don't be afraid to live again. I struggled with that for a long time, and you will reach a point where it's like you live again for yourself, but also for Dawn. Like, right. And maybe it's trips, or maybe it's adventures, or maybe it's anything, but things that he would have loved to have done with you. Right. Like, you kind of do them anyways. So Steph, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for trusting me to have these conversations with you. And just thank you.
Thank you so much for having me and, allowing me to talk about my dad. Honestly, I can't wait to come back. I love sharing about him.
That's awesome. We're gonna have like our regulars.
For those of you listening, don't forget about Magic Mind. There is a link in the description. Don't forget to use the code PlaceOfYes20 at the website magicmind.com/placeofyes. Place of Yes 20, no A. Thank you for listening to A Place of Yes. Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend, anybody who might benefit from listening to this. It would make a world of difference if we could just reach more people and share the work that we do and the stories we want to tell. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave us a thumbs up, or leave us a comment. We would appreciate all that you can do. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend or 2.